Hello, everyone. Welcome to Teach University. And in this lecture today, we're going to be discussing the power of asymmetric risk. You're probably asking yourself, what the hell is asymmetric risk? We're going to be going over that today. And I think once you discover what asymmetric risk is, you're going to find that it really can be a life-changing concept or idea that can revolutionize how you make decisions and how you manage risk, and how, in fact, we can take on more risks that can lead us to take bigger rewards while also minimizing the downside of the risks that we take. So we're going to be going over all that good stuff today. So again, like with every lecture, I want to start with some quotes, and this is from Daniel Kahneman and Mark Zuckerberg. Kahneman, who said that optimistic people play a disproportionate role in shaping our lives. Their decisions make a difference. They're inventors, entrepreneurs, political, military leaders, not average people. They got to where they are by seeking challenges and taking risks. And Zuckerberg, who said the biggest risk is not taking any risk. In a world that is changing really quickly, the only strategy that is guaranteed to fail is not taking any risk. So in fact, I think based on what they're saying here, is that the biggest risk you can take is not taking any sort of chance or risk at all. And life is about making decisions and taking on risks that can yield rewards. And of course, we live in a society where we've become more risk averse. We want to play it safe. We don't want to rock the boat or do anything that can upset other people or really upset our own stability and our own circumstances, because we all like to feel comfortable. We like to feel safe. But in order for us to grow and really get the results that we want in life, it does require taking some risks. And when you think about modern society, many of the products and services and innovations and conveniences that we have of modern life came about because of innovators and entrepreneurs and politicians and scientists and other actors in many different fields that were able to take on risks and risk their financial independence. They risk their reputations, or even risking, in some cases, their own life to be able to provide a better world for themselves and for society. So it does require taking risks in order, if you want to be able to change things. But what I'm saying here, when it comes to asymmetric risk, we don't need to bet the farm and risk all of our finances, our reputation, or even our lives to get what we want. But it's understanding how to manage risk in such a way where we can minimize the downside and maximize the upside. And that's really what this lecture is about. And I think to analyze this from a micro level, from an individual level, how many people do we know who seem to be extraordinarily successful, but we don't really know why? They don't work any harder than we do, or they're not any different than you and I, but for whatever reason, they seem to be extraordinarily successful. And I believe that these folks are doing something differently than anybody else. And I've talked about this in many of my lectures, where the top successful people, the top 1% in almost any field, they have a different mindset, or they just think and do things differently that give them better results. And part of that is that they take on asymmetric risks. They're able to make bets and take risks that minimize losses and maximize the upside and potential of that decision or risk that they took. So then what is asymmetric risk? Asymmetrical risk is the concept of taking a risk that will produce a return that far surpasses the risk taken. So again, we're not betting the farm here. We're not risking all of our money or our reputation and so forth to get a particular result. We're taking small bets. We're risking a little to get a lot. And to kind of, I think, illustrate this, or to show this to you in a visual here, I want to use this visual where we have this one side of the equation, and I think where many of us fall into this equation, where we take on a massive amount of risk with a small reward. So a good example is that maybe for many of us, and myself included, we work, a 9-to-5 job. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is, over the long term, when working at a regular 9-to-5 job or being an employee, you take on more risk, especially in the macroeconomic environment. There's economic volatility, there's a recession where companies begin to start to lay off people. Then at that point, you take on more risk than reward, because essentially you're exposing yourself to all this risk of getting laid off. And then you end up being in a situation where you're laid off, and then the reward is really small because you're getting this paycheck that you get every 2 weeks, which again is fine, but ultimately doesn't lead to the massive financial rewards, at least, that we would like. So then on the other side of that equation, we have then asymmetric risk where you're taking small bets, taking a small risk, or you're able to minimize the downside where you can maximize then the upside or the reward. And this is the side of the equation we want to be in. We want to make small bets. We want to minimize our risk so we can maximize the reward. Okay, so that even if we lose, we can stay in the game. And that's the whole point here. We want to be able to stay in the game of business and in life, and that means making small bets that over time won't cost us much, but can lead to big rewards. So what are some examples of this? Well, let's talk about the world of finance, for example. If you would have invested, say, $1,000 in Berkshire Hathaway, say in 1964, which back then was a modest amount of money, but nothing that necessarily would break the bank, or even say half that amount, say $500. If you would put $500 in Berkshire Hathaway back in 1964, you'd be basically a multimillionaire today. Again, making a small bet that yields massive rewards. Same thing with Bitcoin. This is a great example of an asymmetric risk. If you would have put $100 in Bitcoin in 2010 when it was about 10 cents a share, it'd be worth over $30 million. Today, give or take, that's an estimate because Bitcoin has gone down a bit from its all-time high of the making of this lecture. Perhaps you're watching this now when Bitcoin is like $100,000 a coin. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not for or against Bitcoin. Just trying to point out here that just a little investment, just $100, a small bet, could yield massive results. So, what are some of the other examples of this? Well, let's say with marketing, social media advertising. When you put videos up, say on Facebook or YouTube, you're taking very small bets. I mean, there's very little risk of putting this video. The worst case scenario is that maybe you'll make a video that maybe embarrasses yourself a little bit. I don't know, whatever. But you put up a video that has very little downside, but the upside could be massive because it can go viral, or you put up enough of these videos, you build more followers, subscribers, there are more potential customers to sell your products and services. You can also get the attention of influencers who may want to work with you and do business with you and so forth. So again, making small bets, very little risk, massive upside. Now, when it comes to entrepreneurship and owning a business, what happens with a lot of entrepreneurs is that they end up being an employee of their business. They own it, but they practically work in it. They're an employee. Where what happens if they get sick or they're not able to work? Well, if they get sick or they can't work, then they don't make money. So then we can see that the risk is massive and the reward is small because they're working a lot. And of course, like with many small businesses, they struggle to make money in the first few years of operation. So then how can we minimize that risk? Well, a lot of entrepreneurs maybe can purchase a business that's already in operation, that already has a customer base, already has products and services already in place. A very good example is like with a franchise, maybe like a Chick-fil-A or McDonald's. These are businesses, obviously they're already established. You don't have to worry about marketing or anything. They're ready to go. So the risk is minimal, but the upside is massive, okay? Or you could own a business where you don't necessarily have to operate it. You can have someone run it for you, or you could be a part owner of a business. So again, it's minimizing the risk or reducing the risk while maximizing the upside. So when it comes to social relationships, we can apply asymmetric risk to relationships as well. When you think about dating is really new in the grand scheme of things of human experience. Okay, when you look at the past, even just going back in the early part of the 20th century, many marriages were either arranged or you usually would marry the person that was in your community or neighborhood that you lived in. You didn't really venture outside of that. Obviously, today, society has changed. We're now, because of dating apps and social and cultural changes, that's a lot different now. Where now, you have a number of different options, I guess, when it comes to dating because of dating apps and so forth. So then when it comes to dating, to put the odds in your favor, then it's making small bets by the more attractive potential partners, attractive people that you find attractive, that you interact with on a daily basis, the more people that you ask out, it increases the probability of someone saying yes, that they'd want to go out with you on a date. Okay, so what's the downside? Well, there's very little downside other than your ego might be bruised, or maybe you feel a little embarrassed if you ask somebody out and they said no, which happens. But the upside could be massive because they could say yes. Again, minimal downside, massive upside. So you see how we can apply this to investing, to entrepreneurship, and to even relationships as well. So, but ultimately here, I think that the underlying theme of this video, and I've discussed this in a lot of my other lectures on Teachly, is that if we want to get the results we want in life, whether it's in business and in our personal lives, it requires taking managed risks. That means we got to go out there, we got to put ourselves out there, we got to be willing to take chances if we want to get to where we want to be. We got to take that leap of faith and believe in ourselves and bet on ourselves that we can accomplish what we set out to accomplish. And that means ultimately getting out there and taking some chances and making decisions, not being reckless, but thinking about how can we minimize the downside and maximize the upside with a lot of decisions that we make. And you'll be surprised that to get a lot of things that we want in life doesn't necessarily require taking massive risk, but it does mean that we got to start making small incremental bets that can yield massive results. So then, by Israel Moore Evivor from Become a Better You, says that risks may make you win or they will make you learn. Either of the benefits is worth daring for. So even if you fail, even if you don't win, you still learn something. And that knowledge that you acquire from taking that risk can benefit you when you make decisions down the road. So either case, you end up winning. So it's important then to take some risks, take chances, and you have to bet the farm in order to get where you want to be. So I think that's really the underlying theme here of this video and this lecture today. Take some risks, take some chances. You don't have to bet the farm, and you'll be surprised at what you can accomplish.